2025 to close 25 deals. So when this is over, you will have no question about what you need to do, and you'll have a better idea about what you need to say. Now, whether or not you do it is totally up to you. Now, I did just post a reel on my Instagram that basically I'm trying to be as optimistic and as little political as I could possibly be today. But in case you are unaware, we had an election last night, and whether or not you believe it went the direction you wanted it to go, as a real estate practitioner, there are reasons for optimism, regardless of your political lean. The two things I pointed out in my reel are the number one issue that people going into the polls or coming out of the polls said for them in this presidential election was the economy. That was the number one concern that people had. And when polled, the overwhelming majority of individuals felt the economy was going in the wrong direction. So put everything else to the side politically. Let's just talk about those two things. The popular vote went to Trump. The electoral college went to Trump, whatever. The fact of the matter is, as real estate practitioners, we need people to feel optimistic about the future. Like, we need people to be excited, or at least feel like the economy is going to get a little bit better, interest rates are going to get a little bit better, whatever it is, right? So more than ever, at least more than in the last few years, because think about this, like, I know Angie knows this, and the people on our team that are watching this know this. I've talked quite a bit about the fact that we've been swimming upstream for the last 2 years. Like, as inflation has gone up, people have less discretionary income. And as interest rates have gone up, the cost of buying a house has just skyrocketed. Now, people blame institutional investors, and they blame all these different things. But the fact of the matter is, as the cost of goods was going up and as interest rates were going up, housing became less and less affordable. So the hope being that we could get some deflationary principles, gas, milk, food, goods, whatever, hopefully become a little bit less expensive, and we get into a more favorable interest rate environment. Now, there are certain things the government could do to help that, like government-backed securities, mortgage-backed securities. For those of you who don't know this, one of the reasons why interest rates are so high right now, we all look at the Fed and go, yay, the Fed dropped interest rates by 0.5 point. That doesn't really have immediate impact on mortgage rates. One of the reasons why mortgage rates are so expensive right now is the government got out of buying mortgage-backed securities. And so then it becomes a completely free market enterprise. And when the government is not buying security bonds and mortgage-backed securities, then interest rates kind of go through the roof, because the only people investing in mortgage-backed securities are private equity firms and institutions. There is no competition there from the government to keep it lower. So when considering those things, it should give you some reason as a real estate practitioner for optimism. All that to the side, I want to make a case for what needs to be done and a little bit about what needs to be said to ensure that in 2025, either you or the people that you have the responsibility to lead can get their 25 deals done. Now, I don't care what market you're in, what economy you're in. If you do 25 real estate transactions, you're going to make well north of 6 figures, and you're going to be able to provide not just a living and the needs of yourself or your family, but you'll be able to provide some of the wants of life. I had the opportunity to speak last week in Portland, Oregon. I don't know if any of you guys were there, but whenever I'm introduced on stage, it's always so tempting for people to go like, this is Joe Herrera. He runs a team out of Las Vegas, and they buy a lot of investment deals and yada, yada. And I'm always like, the first thing I do when I get up there is I go like, let me just kind of backtrack on my bio that was just shared. I am a passionate husband. I am an obsessed father. Like, those are the things that are actually me. When I got into real estate, the tagline that goes along with real estate is "We are realtors." The National Association of Realtors marketing scheme was, "We are realtors. Real estate is our life." If real estate is your life, you can hang up on me right after this. You can get off the call. If real estate is your life, get a life. Like, have a family, have some fun, have some friends, have some hobbies. Like, this industry that we're a part of should be something that we use to fuel our life. It should not be our life. Well, in order to fuel our life effectively, we need to do enough deals that we can actually create the income that allows us to provide for our needs and acquire some of our wants. So I'm not sure if that makes sense for you, but that's what I'm going to be talking about today is not survival, it's thrival. Like, I don't even think that's a word, but I just made it up. It's thriving in 2025. So let's get into some of the principles of it. All right. 3 things that matter in 2025 when it comes to your real estate career. This is it. Number 1, are you having and how do you generate conversations? Number 2, are you having and how do you generate face-to-face meetings with clients? And number 3, are you having and how do you generate closings? Now, there is a waterfall effect from this, and I'm going to kind of mathematically make a case for you. But the fact of the matter is, when you have conversations with potential buyers and sellers, those conversations mathematically lead to appointments. And when you have appointments, face-to-face appointments with buyers or sellers, they mathematically lead to closings. Now, I've talked about this and beat this drum for the last couple of months. So if you've heard this before, just bear with me for the next 10 minutes while I break it down. But you have to understand this math. This is the calories in, calories out equivalent of your real estate business. If you've ever tried to get in shape, you know that any nutritionist, dietitianist, or physical trainer worth their weight is going to tell you your physical health is to some degree determined by the number of calories you intake and the number of calories you expend. It is impossible to lose weight while intaking an excess of what you expend. So like if my body naturally burns 2,400 calories a day, including some of my activity, if I ingest 3,000 calories a day, sorry to bore you guys, but the 600 excess calories are going to make their way probably to my muscles. Now, my muscles, as defined by my son Porter when he was 6 years old, he pointed at these little muscle areas on my lower back on either side and said, "Dad, you have really big muscles." He was talking about my love handles, but that's where the extra 600 calories go on me is I get kind of some love handles, right? So if you do not have somewhat of a calorie balance, and I love that Jessica says the carnivore diet, eat a ton of calories. I love it. In the traditional sense, if you have a calorie excess over what your body expends, you're probably going to put on some weight. If you have a calorie deficit without ruining your metabolism, you're probably going to get into better shape. Well, let's talk about the mathematics and the calorie in, calorie out equivalent of your real estate practice. So here's the fact. When you have conversations with people who at least have expressed some sort of interest in the real estate, in buying or selling real estate, when you have a conversation with a potential client, 5% of those conversations will set an appointment with you. So let's talk about what are conversations. Conversations are, if you're a part of a team, your team leader assigns you a lead in your CRM and you pick up the phone and call them and they answer. Now that person may tell you to go F yourself. It still counts as a conversation. Conversations are going into your lead pool or your lead pond. So on the Joe Taylor Group, Ange will tell you, we've got 120,000 people sitting in lead ponds in the city of Las Vegas. Well, those people at one point over the last few years have raised their hand, usually responding to an ad we've ran on Facebook or something like that, to say like, hey, how much is this house? So it would be really hard to call circle prospecting conversations because you're calling people out of the blue who've never shown any propensity to transact in real estate. So it's hard to say that like if you just pick up the phone and start robo dialing like a circle prospecting list, it would be hard to call those conversations. But a really good example of a conversation is somebody that walks into an open house. It would be tempting to want to call people walking into an open house appointments, but in reality, they do not convert at the same level that an actual appointment converts at. So 5% of every human being you talk to that express some sort of interest in real estate will convert to a set appointment. Now, only 50% of the appointments you set will actually happen. If you set more than 5%, like 1 out of every 20 people you talk to sets an appointment with you, you're not having enough conversations. And if 100% of the appointments you set show up, you're not setting enough appointments. Like, this took me a while to let this sink in, but the math is the math is the math. Brian Charlesworth, who owns Sisu, Spring Benson, a partner of mine, I've had a lot of conversations with Brian around this. And I'm like, well, Brian, imagine what we could do to our real estate business if we're able to go from 5% conversation to appointment to 20% conversation to appointment. And he's like, Joe, if your agents take 20% of the conversations they have and turn them into appointments, you may celebrate that fact, but the reality is they're just not having enough conversations. Jessica, I hope this isn't, I don't mean for this to be depressing. I just want it to be the math is the math is the math. So if my agents are like, dude, 80% of the appointments I set show up, I will give them a pat on the back and then say, and the Jer Bear and Deanna will know this because I'll say it to them, like, you're just not setting enough appointments. Like, if everyone shows up, you're waiting too long to set an appointment. Now, the reality is when only 50% of your appointments show up, the ones that we need to celebrate is that 2 out of every 10 or 1 out of every 5 people you meet face-to-face will do a deal with you. So the reason I bring this up is, think of it budgetarily. If I don't have a budget, how do I know if I'm increasing my net worth? Like, how do I know if I'm not so Taylor runs our investment company, and my son is one of the guys that works on our investment team. Right now, they're reading The Richest Man in Babylon. And it's like, how do you know if you're improving your net worth or your financial standing if you are not disciplined enough to say, like, all right, 10% of everything I come in goes to savings, 10% of everything that comes in goes to taxes, 10% of everything that comes in goes to tithing or some sort of charitable donation, and I live off of 70%. Well, if you just bring money in and spend money, then at the end of the year, you'll just look at your bank account and either go like, I lost money or made money or I'm bankrupt or whatever. But if you don't have a plan, you're going to fail. The other analogy I use with this is Alice in Wonderland and the Cheshire Cat. Like, if you don't know where you desire to go, it really doesn't matter where you go from here. So what I want to make the case for is I'm going to show you exactly what you need to do to close 25 deals in 2025. Whether or not you do it is up to you. But if you called me right now, if Jessica called me, said, hey, Joe, I want to disagree with you again about the calorie thing, I'd be like, let's talk about it, because I just need to eat more protein, period. I had to get a cortisone shot in my elbow yesterday because I don't eat enough protein. I play too much golf. But if she called me and said, hey, Joe, this year didn't go as well as I planned, I would say, all right, cool. Well, let me ask you this. How many deals are you going to close? And Jessica, maybe you close 100 deals. I have no idea. But let's say she said I closed 14. I would immediately, Angie knows exactly where I'd go with this. I'd be like, well, Jessica, let me ask you this. How many conversations are you having a day? And I'm going to get some sort of answer. She may say, I'm having 30. And I would say, dude, you're crushing it. How many days a week are you having 30? Because, like, Angie knows this. If you ask an agent, like, hey, how many conversations do you have on a daily basis? They're not going to take their average. They're going to take their best. They're going to go like, oh, like 30 or 40. Well, how many times a week are you doing that? It's really Monday and Wednesday, because Tuesday I have to pick up my kids from school. And then Thursday, my husband comes, he needs me to be there, and blah, blah, blah. And so, like, it ends up going, all right, cool. So what you're saying is you have 60 conversations a week, but for math purposes, we can't say 60 times 5 is 300. We have to say 60 times 2 is 120. We then need to divide that by 5 and go, oh, okay, you're averaging 12. Yeah. What is that? You're averaging 24 conversations a day. That's how we would reverse engineer the math. Now, again, if somebody's having 24 conversations a day, let me just give away the ending. If somebody averages 24 conversations a day, they will close 24 transactions a year. So, Jessica, I hope that undepresses everything I've said. Because to give away the end of the movie, the number of transactions you will do in 2025 will be determined not by how good you are at writing contracts, not by how good you are at getting BBRA signed, not by how great your listing presentation is. None of that will move the needle nearly as much as you just committing to a certain number of conversations a day, sticking to it, and then watching it affect your business. So let me show you what it looks like. In order to do 25 deals in 2025, you need to meet 125 human beings face to face over the course of the next 12 months. If you reverse engineer that to a monthly basis, it's basically 10 people a month. If you reverse engineer that to a weekly basis, it's basically 2.5 people a week. So 3 people one week, 2 people the next week. It sounds very simple, but it's a little bit of a challenge if you've ever tried to do this, like to find 10 human beings that either will allow you to come and take a look at their property, discuss listing it, or do a buyer consultation with you, or go and view properties with you. Like, this is the job. Like when we talk about real estate, we talk about closings as if that's our job. That's not our job. That's the reward for our job. What our job is, if you ask Sharon Srivatsa, because he and I have had this conversation, what is the job of a real estate agent? He would say the job of a real estate agent is helping people buy the home they want at the price they want, at the terms they're looking for, and on their timetable. How do you do that? You have conversations with people looking to buy houses. How do you become a great listing agent? You help people sell their home for the price they want, at the terms they desire, and on the timetable they need. Well, how do you do that over and over and over again? You find people looking to potentially sell their home, have conversations with them about it, set appointments to view their home, and then show up to that appointment. So if you've ever read any of my emails or writings, you'll know that I am not, English was my worst subject in school. I hated English. The subject I really loved was math. The thing I love about math is it's honest. Math is an honest academic principle. Like, math is right or wrong. Like, I have $20, I spend 16, I have 4 left. It's just math. And so one of the mathematical principles you and I need to be comfortable with moving into 2025 is, in order to close 25 transactions, I need to have 125 face-to-face meetings, because the conversion ratio nationwide of face-to-face meetings to closings is 20%. Now, in order to have 125 face-to-face meetings, I must set 250 face-to-face meetings, because half of every meeting I set will not happen. And in order to set 250 face-to-face meetings, it says 235 here. I think that's a typo. In order to set 250 face-to-face meetings, I need to have 5,000 conversations, because again, 5% of the conversations I have are going to go to an appointment. Half of the appointments I set are going to actually show up, and 20% of the appointments I show up at are going to do a transaction with me. Questions, comments, concerns, smart remarks, disagreements, any thoughts on any of this stuff? Angie, how true is this in your world? I think there is a little bit of a situation where the longer someone is doing real estate, the more efficient they become at some of these principles. So for you, who closes 40 to 50 transactions a year, some of this math is a little skewed, but what are your thoughts on these principles?
I think that your conversations definitely are going to correlate to your appointments. Like you said, if somebody is getting a lot more referrals and doesn't have to hit the phones as much, they might see, 25 deals in 12 conversations a day. But I think it's pretty spot on with what you got there. It might take more though, maybe more sometimes.
It just depends, right? Like, this is an average. So I'll just tell you, Angie Lauer is the Venus Williams of lead conversion. Like she's just really good. And so two things. She's really good and she has an unfair advantage. One of the unfair advantages she has is when Taylor and I have like a sibling that's buying a house, we're like, oh, cool, we'll just have Angie call you because Taylor and I aren't in practice. So, like, she does have those opportunities that come to her from time to time, or she's done such a good job. She's closed 250 transactions over the last 3 or 4 years. So, there are people who are like, oh my gosh, you have to use Angie. So, that becomes that like Venus Williams is just more athletic than whoever else is like a popular tennis player, and so they win a lot, right? And so like you may have some of those advantages that work for you, but the problem is Angie can't necessarily teach the Angie Lauer method because she has 20 agents that rely on her to help them understand the mathematics of success. And so they may get to that point to where they've built up such a clientele. Fact of the matter is Angie may be able to have 5 conversations a day with different people and end up doing 40 transactions. She may completely screw up the math for everybody, but it's also because of two things. Number one, she's super talented, and number two, she does have some advantages. So it also depends on the quality of conversations, right? Like if every conversation, so I always kind of caveat this with if your significant other is the director of the school board and the school board gives $5,000 to work with you to any teacher that buys their first home, but they have to work with you, that's an unfair, that's the Bronny James. Notice I didn't say LeBron James. I said Bronny James. Like independent of his talent, LeBron James said to the Lakers, you are drafting my son. His son, who averaged 3 points a game at USC, is now a member of the Lakers. I don't think anyone who's ever averaged 3 points a game has gotten drafted by the Lakers, but it's like, you're drafting my son. If you have that type of arrangement, then you just have an unfair advantage on the marketplace. But if you're anything like me, average intelligence, average looks, average athleticism, average everything, you have to play the math because you don't have some crazy advantage over the world. Now, let me get to the question that Stephanie posed. All right. How do we calculate how many conversations we need to have to meet with 3 people per person per week? So let me show you guys how to do this. If you want to meet with 3 people per week, the easiest thing to do is say 3 times 50. So I'm giving you guys 2 weeks off a year. A lot of people would say real estate agents don't get time off, but just for the fun of it, let's say you take two weeks, completely disappear. So that's 150 face-to-face meetings. Now, in order to have a face-to-face meeting, we know that half of them won't show up. So I have to times that by 2. So now we're at 300 face-to-face meeting appointments set, counting on 150 of them throughout the course of the year happening. Now what I'll do is I'll divide this by 0.05, meaning 5% of everyone I talk to is going to set an appointment with me. So that's 6,000. I would then divide that by 50. Now you have to have 120 conversations per week in order to set enough appointments, in order to meet enough appointments. Stephanie, I hope that makes sense on the reverse engineer. Now, again, if I divide that by 5, now we're eating the elephant. You just have to have 24 conversations a day. Now, again, a conversation is, hey, Stephanie, how about you go F yourself? And like, that's a conversation. And then somebody else like, oh yeah, we already bought. And then somebody else is like, yeah, we're not buying for 2 years. And somebody else is like, no, I mean, I was just curious and your site made me register. Like all of that counts because when you boil it down, again, think of it, 120 people you talk to a week, your only goal is to get 6 of them to say, yeah, I'll meet with you, Stephanie, knowing that only 3 of them are going to happen. And so I love that you asked on a meeting 3 people per week basis, because if you think of it as this big, like, dude, I have to have 5,000 conversations in 2025. Like that sounds so daunting, but so does doing 5,000 pull-ups or sit-ups or push-ups or whatever, right? Like that number's just crazy. Where if somebody goes like, hey, Joe, would you like to have a 6-pack? And I say, I don't really care, but I'm sure my wife would love it. All right, cool. Well, all you have to do is do 24 sit-ups a day. over the course of a year, if you do those 24 sit-ups, by the end of the year, you're going to have a six-pack. Then I just wake up every morning. I go like, all right, let me just get this over with. Right. Let me just do my sit-ups. And so this is the conversations are the sit-up equivalent of like achieving your ultimate goal. And you're not allowed to get discouraged. Like one of the greatest country music songs, which I'm not even a country music fan of all time. One of the greatest country music songs of all time, I think, was by Rascal Flatts, a song called God Bless the Broken Road, right? Like all of us have these situations where we're like, holy crap, I'm so glad I didn't end up with so-and-so because I'm with so-and-so now. And like it led to that. Some people are like, dude, I was married to so-and-so and it was a train wreck and I got divorced and then I met this person and they are just my person. So you're like, man, that broken road that got me here was worth it. Well, being told to go F yourself and people hanging up on you and people saying like, why didn't you call me 2 weeks ago? I just bought a house, whatever. That's all the broken road that leads to what you actually want, which is those 6 people, Stephanie, that say like, I'm willing to meet with you. And when somebody calls you to cancel, again, that's the broken road that gets down to the 3. Because if you're having those conversations, Stephanie, I'll tell you, if you're having 24 conversations a day, you're going to close 24 transactions in 2025. If you don't, there's something else broken in your business. I'm going to get into a little bit of what to say here because the reality is a lot of agents don't say the right things. But it doesn't matter if you know how to say the right things if you're just not saying it enough. Like I could be let me just point it to you this way. Bill Jones is the greatest conversational mind of our generation. He closes 0 real estate transactions. So it's like, he's not a realtor, right? But he knows what to say. So it's like knowing what to say does not fix the problem if you're not saying it enough and saying it to the right people. All right. Any other questions on the math before we move into the what? So this is the how, and I want to talk about the what. All right. So let's talk about a couple of things. We all need to be prepared starting right now for what the industry is saying the economy is going to look like now that the election's over. We all need to be prepared for what economists are saying interest rates are going to look like moving forward. We all need to be prepared, right? It's like the worst time to think about what we're going to say is when we're like, all right, Stephanie's like, dang it, I'm going to do what Joe told me to do, and I'm going to start making my calls. And then you get on a call and somebody goes, well, Stephanie, like what are interest rates going to look like in 60 days now that, people know that Trump is coming or whatever? You've got to do a little bit of work to be prepared for that conversation. But more than that, you need to know the subject of every single conversation you're going to have before you ever have it. So when you're having a face-to-face meeting with people, you need to know the subject of that meeting before you ever show up there, or else you're setting yourself up for failure. The only way we know the subject of the meetings we're heading into is we recognize that people do things for their own reasons, not ours. So let me share this video with you guys. I want to see what he is like. Literally a masterclass on branding and knowledge before an appointment even happens. Watch this.
Can't hear it. There's no audio.
I wonder why. I can hear it. All right, I may not be able to fix that. Let me tell you what this video is. This is my daughter, Joni. I'll just play it for you. You can't hear it. So her sister had her do a commercial for chapstick, but watch this moment. This is chapstick. It is called, it trips her out, right? Did you see that moment right there? Watch this. This is chapstick. It is called chapstick. Super confusing for Joni because she's waiting for a brand. She's waiting for this is chaps. These are AirPods. They are called, AirPods. Like it's so confusing for her. So you need to become the who for their why. Like the people in your world, you cannot change people's whys. So heading into everything that's taken place over the last 24 hours, the election, the economy, everything else, they're going to make their own decision. If you think you're going to call people today and be like, hey, I know you've been sitting on the sidelines, but it's time to buy a house, like wake up, right? You're not going to change people's reasons because people do things for their own reasons, not yours. So then rather than teaching people why, you need to be their who. So the who for Joni when it comes to chapped lips is chapstick. Chapstick is actually a brand, not a product. So the question you have to ask yourself is, how do I become the realtor? Like, how do I become the real estate agent that when the people in my circle think of their why, the only logical answer for their who is me? This is deeper than just making your calls. This is like, how are you showing your people that you are the who for their why on a daily basis when it comes to social media? How are you showing your people that you are the who for their why on a daily basis when it comes to email marketing and text messages? Like, how are you showing people that you are the who for their why as far as market reports on the value of their house? Like, that's something that we should all be really obsessed with. Knowing that we can't change people's whys, we need to become chapstick. Like, we need to become the only logical conclusion. Like, I'm just telling you right now, I probably have somewhat of an unhealthy obsession with chapstick. This is chapstick. This is the process Jody went through. She's like, it is chapstick. I use original chapstick brand chapstick because my dad used original chapstick brand chapstick. And like, he used the black one, I use the black one. It's just the same thing my dad used. Guess what my sons use? They use chapstick. Like, it's just what we do as Herrera men. It's just our life, right? If my wife's like, hey, sweetheart, I got you some chapstick, and she hands me even chapstick brand like strawberry, I'd be like, yeah, I'm not using that. There is no way. Because the only logical choice for me when my why happens, which means my lips are chapped, is my what, which is my who, basically, which is chapstick brand chapstick. I know that sounds stupid, but part of what you need to do is prepare the people in your world for you being the only logical who to their why. Does that make sense at all? Does that resonate with you? Now, you do that through psyop, for lack of a better term. You do that through just being the person. Now, some of you who are in our world at Real know that this is my world. Now, not with clients. 99% of the content I put out on my social media channels is to connect with real estate agents. I just want to be their who when their why changes. I'm not happy with my brokerage. Like, I'm thinking about moving over to Real, whatever. I just want to be a part of that conversation because I'm not in the actual practice of day-to-day real estate. I just want to be people's who when their why changes. So knowing that you can't control people's why, my advice to you is really focus on becoming their who. Here's how you do it. You recognize that curiosity is the greatest fuel for human conversation. This is not their curiosity. This is yours. We were given 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth. This is the dumbest analogy and the dumbest meme of all time. But what if we use those things accordingly? 40% of everything we do is we watch people's lives. We watch their actions. We watch their struggles and their successes. The other 40% of what we do is we listen to the challenges, to the hopes and dreams and ambitions they have. And 20% of what we do is ask questions using our mouth. That's not how we as human beings operate with each other. How we operate is, hey, Emily, how's real estate? And Emily's like, oh my gosh, let me tell you, blah, blah, blah. Like, no offense, Emily, you probably don't do that. But I'm just saying, in theory, it's like, oh, the market's so great. And I've been doing this, and I've been doing this, and I've been doing this. Where in reality, somebody comes to Emily and goes like, hey, Emily, how's the real estate market? Tracy, I'm so glad you asked. Let me ask you this. What are you seeing in your neighborhood? Like, are you seeing more for sale signs? Are you seeing people move? What are your friends saying? Now, we would think that Tracy would go, well, wait a minute, Emily, I asked you first. It doesn't work that way. What's going to happen is Tracy go like, you know what? It is crazy. I saw my neighbor went up for sale and then those people moved. And I was talking to so-and-so at the store and they said they're thinking about moving to Florida and right. And like, that's just how it happens. But what Emily has to do is when Tracy asks that question, she has to fight the urge to use what is the minority rather than what is the majority. So what Emily needs to do is she needs to look at Tracy. She needs to think about what she's seen from Tracy lately. She needs to listen to the things that Tracy's been saying. And then if she does use her mouth, she needs to use it in the form of curiosity. You know what, Tracy? That's a great question. Let me ask you this. I mean, I'm in it all day. I'm just curious what you're seeing. What are your friends saying? What are they saying at the gym? Like, what are your friends at church saying? Like, that should be the thing. Even though Tracy asked Emily, Emily should then turn around and go, I'm rubber, you're glue. Whatever you say bounces off of me and sticks to you, right? The stupidest thing I used to say when I was 8 years old. But that's how our conversation should go. Our curiosity should fuel our conversations. And here's one thing. Imagine this world where Tracy walks up to Emily and goes like, Emily, how's the real estate market? Because I've been hearing it's going to crash. Now Tracy could go like, freaking, or Emily could go, freaking Tracy, I'm so sick of that. Everybody, blah, 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 right? That's Tracy hurling something my way and it's sticking to me. How easy is it for Emily to just go, Tracy, you know what? I don't hear that a lot. Where's that idea coming from? Like, where are you hearing that? Who's saying that? It's probably going to be Tracy's brother that's a firefighter or something like that. Like, oh, my brother's been saying it's going to crash forever. Blah, blah. And then Emily's going to go, dude, is your, like, I mean this in all due respect. Like, is your brother in the industry? Is he an economist? Is he like a lender? Is like, no, he's a firefighter. Like, oh my gosh. So that's what they're saying down at the fire department. Right. And it's just like, the reality is Emily doesn't know. She's not an economist. But the other reality is it doesn't matter what Emily thinks the market's going to do. It doesn't matter what her opinions are. What matters is what Tracy thinks, because Tracy's the potential buyer or seller. Now, the whole trick in this is to get Tracy to talk herself out of her crazy ideas. Tracy's like, oh my gosh, why am I the one that's being accused of having crazy ideas? But I'm just saying, like, that's the conversational equivalent. Because the reality is when we hit head scratching moments, if we just dig a little bit deeper, people will usually talk themselves out of it. Tracy may go like, I know, my brother's a nutcase. He also thinks that, EMP is going to hit. And so he's got all this weird like food storage. Like, she'll talk herself out of her brother's crazy ideas. All right. Last but not least on this. I have for sure a relatively mild case of physical claustrophobia, but I 100% have conversational claustrophobia. I don't know if you've ever diagnosed yourself with this, but how often are you in conversations where you're like, oh my gosh, I hate this. I hate this topic. I hate these questions. So some of us try to get ourselves out of conversational claustrophobia by talking our way out of it. That's the wrong approach. The reality is when we find ourselves in a conversation that we are not comfortable with, or the direction is going in an area we don't want it to go, if we want to control the conversation, we should not talk, we should ask. So when you're in some weird conversation that you don't want to be in, we have to realize that if we want to control the conversation, we have to ask questions that take the conversation in a different direction. So these are just the 4 pillars of Phil Jones's conversational excellence. Number 1, what is number 1? Let me go back. It's been a while. The worst time to think about what you're going to say is when you need to say it. You need to know the subject of every conversation before you head into it, and you need to make sure that you're educated on whatever topic you're going to have. Number 2, you have to realize that people do things for their reasons, not yours. So while you need to have knowledge on whatever conversation you're heading into, it's important that you don't try to just bully people with your knowledge. You need to realize that your job is to help understand their issues. Number 3, you're going to do that with curiosity. And number 4, you're going to ask questions. All right, we got a few minutes left. I've talked about this before, but this is the most important math equation you can run in human relationships, which is I need to establish a relationship with you based on three things. I need to understand a little bit about your past. I need to have an understanding of your current situation, and I need to have an idea of your hopes and dreams and ambitions for the future. So we could go either on the sale side, the listing side, or the buyer side. On the listing side, it's a very simple conversation. I may go to Bill's house and I walk in. Now, I'm tempted because I put together such an amazing presentation to just bully through Bill's, like his hopes and dreams, ambitions, and just say, like, here's what I'm going to do for you. The most important thing I could do in a listing presentation is say, hey, Bill, just so you and I are on the same page, I'm only here because my goal is to help you sell your property for the price you want, on your timetable, and on the terms that make sense to you. But before we get into those things, help me understand how you ever got this property in the first place. How did you find it? Why'd you pick this house? I want to know whatever I can know about Bill's past with this property. There's always going to be some story there. You know who's super positive about Bill's past? Me. Bill may say, like, I don't know, I kind of got bamboozled and the market was crazy. And you were like, the for sale sign went up and I called right then and we paid 10,000 over asking price and yada, yada, yada. And I'm going to go, well, Bill, sounds like it was a little bit of a crazy process, but I'm just here to tell you, man, you made a great decision. This place is awesome. And you're going to make a lot of money when you sell it. I have to validate Bill's past decisions if I ever want to, like, Bill has to know that I think of his past with positivity if I ever hope to be a part of his future. I learned this when I started dating my wife. And for a while there, I would just kind of make fun of every other boyfriend she ever had in her life. And then I realized that what I was doing is I was making her feel bad about her dating decisions in the past. If she felt bad about her dating decisions in the past, how would I ever expect her to feel good about her dating decisions now? And so I've learned to just be like, oh my gosh, that guy you dated was such a great guy, right? And I try to find something cool that I admire about it. Well, in order to move from the past to the present, I would need to ask Bill a couple of questions. Now, so much of us, when we go to listings, will say like, hey, Julia, help me understand all the problems with this place, right? I see some water stains. I can kind of smell something, right? Like, it's like, tell me all the things that are wrong with it. I don't know why that's the process we go to, because the process we should actually go through is me saying to Bill, hey, Bill, tell me the three things you love the most about this property. What are the three things that you've enjoyed the most about living here? And as soon as he gives me those three things, I'm going to go like, dude, I love the way your mind works. This is awesome. Now help me understand this. What are we looking for in your next house? And I know I'm here to talk to you about selling this one, but before we can, before I can really help accomplish your goals, dreams, and ambitions here, I just need to know, where are we going? And after going through that process, Bill has given me the gift to say one very simple thing. Like, hey, Bill, because you mentioned X, Y, and Z, I would love to recommend to you A, B, and C. Like, it's super, super simple, because here's the relationship equation. I'm going to use curiosity to gain some certainty about Bill. Can you guys see my cursor here on the screen? Cool. So I'm going to use curiosity to gain some certainty. That certainty is going to give me empathy. Now, the reality is, empathy in my immature brain was always agreeing with people's decisions. And it was really hard for me to be empathetic, because I believe from time to time that people make the craziest decisions I've ever heard of in my life. But the reality is, empathy is not agreeing with, but it's understanding somebody. Phil Jones gave me the definition. He got it from somebody else, which is empathy means caring about the things that people you care about care about. It may be super important for you to live near the Strip in Las Vegas because you deal blackjack at the Monte Carlo or whatever. I don't want to live near the Strip. So it's like, I can't necessarily agree with that decision, but I can certainly empathize with it because I care about you. I care about what you care about. So when I have empathy for somebody, it allows me to relate to them. Like I can say, hey, Julie, I totally get that. Like I understand why you want to do that. And now my entire mission is to find you a home near the Monte Carlo that is at the price you want, on the terms you want, on the timetable you're comfortable with. Once I have a little bit of empathy and relatability for somebody, it gives me the courage to encourage them to take action. Think about it this way. If I encourage you to take an action before I properly diagnose your goals, dreams, and ambitions, that is the entrepreneurial equivalent of malpractice. It is the equivalent of you showing up to a doctor's office and them going like, hey, Julia, before you tell me why you're here today, let me just go ahead and give you a prescription for Oxycontin. Like, you're like, whoa, what? This is crazy. Or you know what? Hey, Ange, you know, you kind of mentioned your stomach's been upset. I'm going to put you on diabetes medication. It's like, whoa, how did we get there? If you don't do the triage, you don't have the right to issue a prescription. So in your business, you need to properly understand people's past, present, and future ambitions in order to say like, hey, Bill, why don't we do this? Or are you open to heading down this path? Or would you consider this idea? Hopefully that makes sense. All right. Count your conversations for 2025 and make your conversations count. Now, the reality is, if you're a psychopath, you can have the number of conversations I'm telling you you need to have and still not close the number of transactions you need to close. There is a baseline understanding that you're going to be a rational human being. You're going to do your best to try to make every conversation you have count. You're going to do your best to speak about things in a way that will help you and them achieve the desired result. So you could prove me wrong. Say, Joe, I had 25 conversations a day and I ended up closing 12 transactions. My response to you would be one of two things. Either A, you're just not cut out for sales, or B, you're probably speaking somewhat like a psychopath. Because if you have that many conversations with that many people every single day, 5 days a week, 50 weeks out of the year, and you don't have closings, you are the opposite of a Venus Williams, Michael Jordan, whatever. You're the worst conversationalist that ever existed. And so realizing that the vast majority of us are just going to be pretty dang good when we have conversations, I would say that the vast majority of your problems or the agents you are leading's problem is they're just not having enough conversations. Now, I'm going to post this on my Instagram to get a recording of this call, and I'm going to share a script with you. All you got to do to get the recording and the script is comment on the Instagram post, but I'm just going to give you the script right now. And then if you want it in writing, you can get it on the Instagram post. If you don't need the recording, you don't need to comment anyways. My Instagram is @Joe Herrera, but here's what you need to do. You need to realize that the most clicked upon image on the internet is attractive people. Now, the mistake that some of you make is because you are an attractive person, you try to make your attractiveness your marketing piece in selling homes. The reality is how attractive a real estate agent is probably will not have a significant impact on their business. You may get followers, you may even get face-to-face meetings, but they will probably be for the wrong reason, and sometimes they'll be very dangerous. So what's the second most clicked upon image on the internet? It is something having to do with housing. It's pools, it's yards, it's master bedrooms, it's kitchens. People love looking at houses. There's entire television networks dedicated to it. So I'm going to encourage you to use image number 2 and not image number 1. Now, I'm not saying don't post pictures of yourself, but I'm just saying I'm going to give you a text message script that very simply will allow you to text people and get a response. Here's how it works. Find 3 pictures of an attractive property for sale in your marketplace and send a script that sounds a little bit something like this. Hey, Cheryl, I'm not sure if this is for you, but I just came across this property in our market, and I believe the seller is willing to make a deal. Who do you know that's looking for a property that looks like this that would want to get a deal knowing that the seller may be motivated? Question mark. That's it. Now, hopefully in your mind, you're going, well, Joe, you didn't talk about how much it was and you didn't talk about where it was. I know I didn't, because what I want to have happen is I want Cheryl to say to me, after non-responding to all of my calls and text messages for like 20 years, I want Cheryl to go, hey, Joe, how much is it? And then I'm going to, out of integrity, step away from my desk, go outside and text Cheryl and go like, hey, I just stepped away from my desk. I'm going to get you that information here in the next few minutes. Just out of curiosity though, what is your budget? Or Cheryl's going to go like, hey, Joe, where is that one? Hey, Cheryl, I stepped away from my desk. I can't remember exactly where it is, but I'll grab that for you. Just out of curiosity, what part of town are you looking to be in? And so I'm always trying to get what I don't have. If I know Cheryl's budget is 600, 800,000, and I know that this house is 775,000, what I don't know is where Cheryl wants to be. Or I may know she wants to spend 775 on the west side of Vegas. And this may be a 775 house on the west side of Vegas, but what I don't know is what her timetable is. So I may say, hey, Cheryl, I'm 99% sure it's where you want your next home at your budget. Just out of curiosity, what is your timetable? Because I'm not sure how long this one's going to last. So I'm always trying to get what I don't have. If you use that text message script, you can use it to create conversations that count. So you may start Monday, Wednesday, and Friday texting that text message script to 20 different people every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. This will probably do more to helping you create conversations with potentially interested human beings than anything else you do. Now, you have my permission, not that you need it, to text people just straight up out of the blue that you go to church or you go to the gym or you play golf or you play pickleball or you whatever with. Text your friends that are insurance agents. Like, hey, Jim, I'm not sure if this is for you, but maybe one of your clients, I came across this house. I think it's going to be a great deal. I think the seller's motivated. Who do you know that may be interested in a property like this? So on the Instagram post, you're going to get that script. You're also going to get a recording of this call. With that said, Emily's been having conversations while we've been on this call. So congratulations. I hope I am good juju. But the bottom line is, guys, if you're not tracking your numbers, you're never going to get where you want to go. I don't care if it's Sisu. I don't care if it's Brivity. I don't care if it's Lofty. I don't care if it's top producer. Dude, I was at an event in Portland the other day. This lady's like, I've been a passionate top producer user for 27 years. And I'm like, holy crap, you're the one. Anyways, if you're still using top producer, no knock. You may have an AOL email address as well. I don't care what you're using, but you have to track your numbers. Now, my son that sits in the other room on our investment team, he puts notches on a piece of paper. And at the end of the day, he texts his team leader, hey, today I had 23 conversations. He knows he has to do it every day. If you don't have an accountability partner, partner with somebody that you know. Hey, let's hold each other accountable. I'm going to have 22 conversations a day so that I can close 22 transactions in 2025. And then text each other at the end of the day. I did or I didn't do it. Now, are you able to make up for it? Yes. But the problem is, just like sit-ups, there is a cadence to this that matters. You can't just go, I want to average 20 conversations a day, so I'm not going to do anything for 9 days, and on day number 10, I'm going to have 200 conversations. The two reasons you're going to fail with that is, number one, you're human and you can burn out. And number two, you're human and you could get distracted. So my guess is you won't be able to keep up that cadence of 1 out of every 10 days, you have 200 conversations so that you can average 20 conversations a day. My advice is treat it like sit-ups, do it early in the morning, track your numbers so you know exactly what your numbers look like. And I can make you this promise, so long as you're not a psychopath, so long as you're not completely in the wrong industry, if you average the number of calls that you want to close in transactions at the end of 2025, if you average that number of conversations every day, 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, you're going to absolutely hit your goal. I hope this helps. Hope you have a good day. Hope you have a good week. Hope you're ready to capitalize on some of this optimism. because I think, like Emily's seeing, people are coming back to the market like, all right, I'm ready to do some deals. We have some vision one way or another how to move forward. So I'm stoked. I hope you guys are as well. Have a great day.